Hey cactus friends, it's Jenny from Cookies Cacti. We are here for the 4.5-month update on Cookies seedlings. So the setup has changed quite a bit since the last time that we did an update. I believe we did it at 2 months. You can see that this tray only has 8 pots in it. And the reason is because I started to air out the seedlings due to mold and fungus problems. And as you recall from the earlier update videos, I had this tray completely or almost completely full, and there are a whole bunch of Ariocarpus pots. And as we had discussed, we were going to treat Ariocarpus different this time by keeping them covered with some more protection from light and more higher humidity for longer. So when I needed to open up the dome for the other seedlings, I moved all of the Ariocarpus pots to this tray. Let me uncover this. So they are sitting in here where they can remain covered for much longer, and I'm planning to keep them in here for at least a year, and what we'll do is just assess over time and see if we need to make any changes. So they are sitting in their own tray with their own dome, and as you saw, I had a shade cloth over it. How much light do they need? I don't know. We're just going to have to watch it as it goes. I did notice that there were still mold and fungus issues in here, so I think just like maybe 5 days ago, I opened the dial just a little bit. You can see a little gap there, a little bit of air in there, but with the covering like this, it will still keep the pots from drying out too quickly. So we're just going to try this. Now, one thing is that I have actually 9 pots of Ariocarpus seedlings and only 8 of them fit in here. So there's one straggling pot sitting over here of Ariocarpus sitting in a freezer bag. The other pot of Euphorbia obesa seedlings is sitting here. And as you can see, they are fully out of their bag, plastic bag, and sitting out in the open directly under the grow light. The funny thing was that after I took this out of the bag, 2 more seedlings sprouted up on their own. Well, maybe I'll use, see here and here. They just germinated on their own without any covering or anything. No dome, no bag. They just sprouted on their own. So let me move everything over onto the table and let's talk about the progress and the update since last time. All right, I've got all the pots of seedlings on the table where we can take a look at them. So for those of you who have been following for a while, you know that this channel is called Cookies Cacti. Cookie is my cat, my sweetest girl ever, and unfortunately she passed away on July 1st of this year, 2025. So while Cookie was on her final decline, I had this thought of I'm going to sow seeds on the day that she died. And so that's what I did. So these seedlings actually come from the night after she passed away, and then the following 2 days after that. And so I've had a couple of videos, I believe, showing these seedlings and updating on their growth progress. Since the last update, things have not been going well. So let me show you. So on July 1st, the day that Cookie passed, that night I sowed 7 pots of seeds. It's these 6 here, and then this pot of Euphorbia obesa. Now, I'll start with the good news. The Euphorbia obesa are doing fantastic. Did all the seedlings that germinated survive? No. You can actually, here, let me zoom in. You can actually see a couple of the carcasses right here. But the rest of the seedlings are doing fantastic. These are 4.5 months old now, so we're right smack dab in the middle of November. It has been 4.5 months since Cookie passed. These are kind of my insurance seedlings because the obesa tend to grow fairly well, though you never know. There are no guarantees when growing plants from seed, but so far so good, and we'll just hope that they continue on this path. Look at those markings. Okay, now we come to the other 6 pots which are not doing great. These are Phaerocactus Harare. Oh, by the way, all these seeds are from my own plants. The Harare are, I've historically struggled with growing these from seed, and I'm still struggling with them. They're still alive, as you can see, but somewhere between, I think it was around 2.5 to 3 months or so, I had a major fungal breakout in the tray under the dome. And you can see can you see it? The remains of it here. You see that orange, those orange spots? They're all over the cactus. Not only these pots, but other pots within this tray, which you'll see in a bit. These are still alive, and in the past when I've grown these, they could still stay alive to this point, but then they'll probably die off later. The other interesting thing, as I've mentioned in the past update video, is that for some reason these seedlings look like they're variegated, even though the mother plant is solid green. I don't know if this is actually a sign of, something good, or if the seedlings are just weak and sick. Because this has happened at least the other time that I tried to grow these from seed. I saw the same characteristics. And I have a couple of cactus friends who I shared these seeds with, and they're seeing the same thing. I don't have a lot of faith that these will do okay, but I'm just gonna try. I have tons of seeds from that plant, so I'll probably just keep trying over and over again. Here's another pot of the seedlings that were sowed on July 1st. These are supposed to be Astrophytum onzuka hybrids. For some reason, I have a really hard time growing onzuka from seed. They're slow, they're small, they kind of grow strange for me. And you can see this pot is pretty sparse. There's still some alive, but at 4.5 months, these are pretty small, I think. They're still here, but it's just not, it's not a thriving pot of seedlings. And this is not surprising either. I've struggled with these before. Here's a pot of Copiapoa humilis. Not great either. Still a few seedlings that are alive, but you can see a pretty sparse pot. These are Astrophytum hybrid seeds, which you would think this is supposed to be one of my insurance pots, kind of like the Euphorbia obesa, but it did not turn out the way that I had hoped. Because in my cactus seed soil battle video, you saw how well a lot of those hybrids grew, but in here, the germination, first off, wasn't that great. And then of the seedlings that have survived, you can see the condition that they're in. I don't know. And you see that the signs of that fungus breakout that I talked about. You see that? I'm actually not too concerned about the look of the fungus because these are so young that if they stay alive, they're going to outgrow those scars. You'll never even know those scars were there once they get larger. What I am concerned about is the health of these seedlings, but what can you do? The next pot is extremely sparse. I have 2 pots of Mammilliara. This is one of them, Mammilliara lenta, and you can see somebody accidentally got into this pot, but there's a fuzzy one. I don't think they're gonna survive. And Mammilliara has always been challenging for me to grow from seed. Their seeds are really small, the seedlings are really small, and I have a hard time getting them going and getting them to stay alive and kind of past this teeny tiny phase in their life. So here's the other pot. The mother plant is maybe Sempervivi. It kind of looks like Sempervivi, but I don't know what actually it is. It's just the Mammilliara species. I thought everything was actually dead in this pot, but when I sat down just a moment ago to show you all this, I noticed there's actually 2 green seedlings in here. It's a miracle. Don't hold your breath on this. You see how small they are? I mean, compared to the Astrophytum, the Mammilliara are so small. I don't know. We'll see. Then we've got seedlings that came from the following days, I think July 2nd and then July 3rd. These 2 were sowed July 3rd. So this is a pot of Astrophytum hybrids. And I literally took the seeds off the plants, and threw them into this pot. So they were freshly harvested and they came up like crazy. But as you can see, lots of scarring. Look at that, from that fungal breakout. So what happened was I noticed that they were starting to be affected by this fungus, and I kind of didn't pay that close attention. And at some point I looked at it, I was like, no, this can't be. So I think it was around probably 3 months or so that I started to open the dials on the dome, and drying out the pots, I could see the fungus not being active anymore because The fungus was orange when it was active, and you can see these are all scars that are left over, but they're not really that orange anymore. You'll still see some in there, but drying the pots out definitely helped stop the fungus from continuing. But, you know, it's unsightly on these seedlings. But again, if these seedlings survive and they continue growing, they will outgrow the scars. This is not my first encounter with fungus. I've had my seedlings outdoors that you all have seen in past videos that got some sort of rust fungus. You can even barely tell that they had that problem anymore. This is what I will call Gymno nudum. And they were doing so well in the last update, and now look at them, scarred from that fungus. But again, same comment. If they can survive through the infection, which you can see that the fungus infections all are, they're not orange anymore. They're kind of a brown, more subdued color, but you know, that looks pretty bad. That's also pretty bad. You can kind of see, like in this seedling, sorry, it's really hard for me to hold the camera really still, but you see in the center of the seedling is starting to grow some more healthy tissue out. So, you know, these plants are very resilient and they are built to survive. So something like this, I personally don't give up on them. I just let them go and see if they can continue. So we'll see when we come back, I don't know, in another couple months or so to see how they're doing. So, you know, oftentimes the biggest question on growing cactus from seed is, how do you know when to open up that environment and dry them out? There really isn't a good answer for that. In my case, it has almost always been fungus that gets me to open the dome. Okay, let me rearrange this a little bit so we can take a look at the rest of the pots in that tray. Okay, so these are all the pots of Ariocarpus. Again, all seeds from my own plant. And I recently did a video on harvesting Ariocarpus seeds. And I mentioned in that video about trying a different way of growing them from seed. Well, this is the batch of Ariocarpus that I was referring to in that video, cookies, seedlings. So I have mentioned in the past that I am terrible at growing Ariocarpus from seed. I think we tried them in the cactus seed soil battle and the lazy way to grow cactus from seed series, in which they all ended pretty terribly on the Ariocarpus. So here we are trying again, because why not? I have seeds, might as well try growing them. So you can see at 4.5 months, this pot is not bad. So a lot of seedlings that are alive and they look fairly healthy. Although this tray is also having problems with fungus. For example, can you see that? That seedling right in the center of the screen? It's got scars on it. And I still have the dome covering this tray, so drying out the pots is probably not going to be an option for now, because our whole thing is trying to keep them covered in an environment where they don't dry out too quickly and see if they do better. Because I've mentioned in the past, I can get these to about a year and then they just die off. Here's another pot. It's looking okay. Sorry, it's probably really hard to see the plants because they sort of camouflage themselves against the top dressing. But you can see the little tubercles there. These are a couple pots that actually look fairly, they probably look the best out of all of them. Now let's look at the other ones. Like this pot, that seedling I think is rotting. And there are others that kind of look similar, but you see kind of sorry, hopefully you were reading the labels as we were going. These are all retuses types so far, but definitely some issues. Not all the pots are doing well. Some are doing better than others. This one is a Fissuratus times something. And this pot is definitely more sparse. Oops, sorry. See some seedlings there. You see a lot of that green stuff. I'm not doing anything to try to do anything about that green stuff. A lazy way to grow cactus from seed is still the same. I don't treat my soil, which you could say is probably what's causing all the fungus. Yeah, maybe. But I don't want to do all the sanitizing on the soil mediums and stuff. You can see this pot's actually doing pretty well. It's looking okay, this one. This one is also retusus. Let's see, what do we have next? This is supposed to be trifingers, or it comes from the trifinger mother plant. It's a little sparse. Oh, look at that. Kind of a brown seedling. I don't know if that's rotting, maybe. You can see scarring on that one, on that seedling right there. And then we've got this pot, which feels pretty sparse. This is a fissuratus pot. You can see some very dark seedlings there. It's all very difficult to see. This pot is definitely sparse, and I apologize if my camera is moving around. I'm holding the camera by hand, and there's no stabilization, or very little, in this camera, so bear with me. Pretty sparse on that pot. And then this is also fissuratus. You can see the effects of the fungus. Otherwise, some, you know, I think those look okay. I have one more pot that's in the bag. Let me move that forward. We can take a look at them. Of all the pots, I tried to pick one to separate in the bag just because I don't have enough space in the tray for 9 pots. I picked a pot that wasn't doing all that great. This is supposed to be some sort of like agavoides times trifinger, at least the mother plant is. And this pot is fairly sparse. Oops, let me see if I can get it so you can see it. Okay, there. You can see one seedling there, one seedling camouflaged in there, some others sort of spread out. You see those little white, I don't even know what they're called, at the end of the tubercles. So there's still some plants in here. Very green. You can see that the bag still has condensation on the inside. I think I'm gonna open up this just a little crack so it's not fully sealed, so there's a little crack there. And I think my idea is that they don't have to be in the same condition that they were when they germinated, you know, with like super high humidity. I just want to prevent the pots from drying out too quickly. So I don't know. I'm going to try that out. Many of you are the ones who actually gave me the suggestion of, you know, keeping them covered for longer. And I think the suggestion totally makes sense. These Ariocarpus, they are pretty sensitive babies. Like all of these guys are already out in the open, and I allow the pots to dry out. But not the Ariocarpus. Oh my gosh. All right, so that is the 4.5-month update on cookie seedlings. We'll probably come back in another couple months and see how they're doing. I've mentioned before that doing something like this is kind of wonderful and also horrible at the same time, because there's this feeling of, if these seedlings don't do well or if they die, there's a really heavy emotional connection of these seedlings. But I think the idea is the act that we did it at all. And in this case, it's actually captured on camera and shared with all of you on YouTube. So I think that's all that matters, that we tried. So even if they don't do well, that's okay. We'll just keep trying in Cookie's name. The last thing I would like to do to close out this video is to highlight the incredible talent and generosity of my viewers. Many of us are familiar with ceramic cookie that was handmade and gifted to me by Galena of Seed and Spine. We had unboxed this together and shared that joy together of seeing this, because I had no idea that she had even made this and that she sent it to me. And this ceramic cookie was sent to me and Cookie while Cookie was still here. Well, since then, I've received 2 more gifts from my cactus friends. I wanted to show you this piece of art gifted to me and made by hand by Kristen of Mrs. Peachy. This is cross-stitched. From here, you almost feel like you're looking at my graphic logo, a digital or a printed version of it, but when you go up close, you'll see it's cross-stitched. Every single stitch done by hand by Kristen. I know she had begun this project while Cookie was still here, and she completed it after Cookie passed away. So there's something about the journey of this piece and the love that was put into it that is just so special. Look at our little Cookie, the stripe on her arm. Oh, a stripe on her nose. It's so beautiful. Amazing. Kristen not only sent me this beautiful piece of art, she also sent me tons of seeds. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's so many seeds. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And the last piece of art that I want to share with you all is you'll see Ceramic Cookie has a friend. Another ceramic cookie. This was made by Veronica of AZ Veronica Makes. I have featured her pottery many times in my video. And the other day we were at the CACSS Mega Silent auction and she came to me and said, I have something for you. And she gave me this. Oh my gosh. I had to hold back my tears. This is so beautiful. Look at that. Oh, my Cookie. I'll say that at 4.5 months, I miss Cookie like crazy. The initial sharpness of pain and trauma has eased. Now it's just this constant ache of missing her like crazy. But I'll say that I did make a realization just probably less than a week ago, is that if I were granted the wish of having Cookie back, would I want that? And I realized that my answer is no. She has completed her life cycle here. It would be so unfair to ask her to come back. And after making that realization, something kind of lifted to a bit. It doesn't make me miss her any less, but there's just something about it that changes the initial protest of she should be here and I want her back. And now I realize that because I love her so much, I still love her as if she's still here. I would never ask of her to do something like that, something that would be unnatural and unfair. She's done her work here. So I will share that I am at that point of, I guess, this grief journey. I miss her like crazy though. I miss her so much. So thank you all very much for tuning in on Cookie Seedlings and following me on this grief journey. I know that this is not an easy topic to meet, loss and sorrow, but it's so much a part of life as well, right? We don't want to avoid it because it is what it is, and I feel like it's a common thread that runs through every one of us here who is alive and who loves. So happy growing, y'all. Take care, and we will come back and check in on these seedlings later. Bye. I love you, Cookie.